Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my HOA Karen Tales channel? Thank you so much. The fire truck sirens blared through the quiet suburban neighborhood, red and blue lights reflecting off neatly trimmed lawns and pristine driveways. The firefighters barely slowed as they rounded the corner, tires screeching slightly as the massive vehicle pulled up to the McCarthy's home. An emergency call had come in. Mr. McCarthy, an elderly man on oxygen, was struggling to breathe. Every second counted. The paramedics inside the fire truck were ready to jump into action, but there was a problem. A problem named Karen. Arms crossed, standing in front of her gleaming white Mercedes. Karen planted herself on the pavement like an immovable force. Her blonde bob was as sharp as the scowl on her face. "Excuse me," she said, her voice dripping with the same entitlement that had terrorized the neighborhood for years. "This is private property. Your truck cannot be here." "Why do that?" The lead firefighter, a broad-shouldered man named Captain Morales, looked at her incredulously. "Ma'am, this is an emergency. Move your car." Karen scoffed. "I don't care what kind of emergency this is. I've told you people before, these trucks are an eyesore. This is a gated community with standards. You can't just park wherever you want." Behind her, inside the house, the muffled sounds of distress could be heard. Mr. McCarthy's daughter was shouting something, probably pleading for help. Captain Morales' jaw tightened. He had seen people die because of delays like this. A younger firefighter, Ramirez, stepped forward. "Ma'am, move the car or we'll move it for you." Karen gasped, clutching her pearls as if he'd threatened to set her on fire. "Excuse me, that's destruction of property. I'll have you all arrested. We're wasting time." Morales growled. He turned to his crew. "Plan B. Hydrant at the corner. Move." The firefighters took off down the street, forced a detour nearly half a block away to access another hydrant. Precious minutes were bleeding away. Karen smirked in triumph. "See? There, problem solved." Then someone smelled smoke. It started as a faint wisp curling lazily from Karen's backyard. It might have gone unnoticed except for a sharp-eyed teenager standing among the horrified crowd. "Ah, is that supposed to be happening?" he asked, pointing. Karen turned, frowning. Her pristine white picket fence was bathed in the eerie glow of flickering orange light. A beat, then boom. The backyard erupted in flames. The gathered neighbors gasped as fire climbed hungrily up Karen's outdoor pergola, licking its way toward her house. The heat pulsed outward, warping the air. "What the?" Karen screeched. "Who did this? This is arson." Captain Morales and his team, still lugging hoses from their half-block detour, froze. Then they realized the fire was at her house. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me," Ramirez muttered. Karen was still screaming as she spun back to the firefighters, jabbing a manicured finger toward them. "Well, do something. Something." Morales gave her a look that could melt steel. "You mean move the truck back?" Karen paled. The realization hit her all at once. Her own car was blocking them from getting close enough. She turned back toward the inferno, where flames were now licking at her patio furniture. The ridiculously expensive sectional she had bragged about in every HOA meeting exploded as the fire reached its cushions. Neighbors were filming. They had been filming since the moment she refused to move her car. One voice cackled from the crowd. "Karen." But Karen, still completely unwilling to accept reality, spun back toward Captain Morales. "You can't break HOA rules. You have to use the other hydrant." Morales, patient, snapped, "Move the damn car." Karen refused, and that's when the firefighters took matters into their own hands. Ramirez lifted his radio. "Dispatch, we have a civilian refusing emergency access. Requesting authorization to remove obstruction by force." A crackle, then the response, "Approved." The crowd roared as the firefighters smashed in Karen's driver's side window. She let out a noise somewhere between a shriek and a dying pterodactyl. "You can't do that." Too late. Ramirez threw the car into neutral, and with the help of 3 others, they pushed it into the street. By the time the fire hoses blasted into action, the entire side of Karen's house was engulfed. Neighbors cheered. Karen stood there, covered in ash and disbelief, as her perfect, pristine McMansion burned. The very rule she had weaponized against the entire neighborhood had come back to destroy her. The moment Karen's backyard erupted in flames, the entire neighborhood seemed to pause in collective shock. The fire spread alarmingly fast, leaping from the outdoor kitchen to the wooden pergola, then licking its way up the back of the house. Bright orange flames reflected in Karen's wide, disbelieving eyes as she stood frozen, unable to comprehend what was happening. "Who did this?" she shrieked, spinning in circles as if searching for some unseen arsonist lurking in the crowd. But the reality was far more humiliating. Karen had done this to herself. The immediate fallout of Karen's stubbornness was evident as firefighters blasted water onto the flames. A group of neighbors had gathered on the sidewalk, watching the spectacle unfold. Did she seriously just block a fire truck and set her own house on fire? One woman asked, shaking her head. Mr. Patel, who had been on the receiving end of dozens of Karen's petty HOA violations, snorted. "I knew her over-the-top outdoor kitchen was going to be a problem. I bet she left the burner on." A few houses down, Mrs. Johnson recorded everything on her phone, narrating like a reality TV host. And here we have Exhibit A. The queen of the HOA realizing she's not above the law. Karen wasn't hearing any of them. She was too busy hyperventilating. Her expensive outdoor kitchen, the one she had smugly bragged about at every HOA meeting, was completely engulfed. Flames devoured the marble countertops, sending popping embers flying. Lying into the night sky, the state-of-the-art stainless steel grill was now a molten heap, and her pristine patio furniture was a loud boom that signaled the cushions exploding as the fire swallowed them whole. Karen let out an ear-piercing shriek. The ironic twist, karma strikes back. Inside the fire truck, Captain Morales watched in grim satisfaction as his team worked to contain the blaze. This could have been avoided easily if Karen had just moved her car. His radio crackled to life. Engine 47 was containing the blaze, but it's spreading fast. "We need additional backup." He turned toward Ramirez, who was still standing near Karen's Mercedes, now parked safely in the street, albeit with a shattered driver's side window. "Tell me we're getting this on camera," Ramirez muttered under his breath. Morales exhaled, barely resisting a smirk. "Oh, you better believe it." And they weren't the only ones. Karen's worst nightmare began. Neighbors were still filming, capturing every second of the chaos she had caused. Karen wheeled on the crowd, arms flailing. "Why are you all just standing there? Help me," someone shouted back. "Like how you helped Mr. McCarthy?" The crowd erupted in agreement. Karen's eye twitched. That was different, but the universe wasn't done teaching her a lesson. The fire had spread to the second floor. Flames licked at the edges of her bedroom window, illuminating her once pristine curtains as they ignited in a fiery burst. The HOA president, Mr. Thompson, approached with a clipboard. "Yes, a clipboard." Karen spun toward him, expecting sympathy. "Finally, someone with authority. Stop them. They broke my window." But Thompson simply cleared his throat. "Karen, due to your failure to comply with emergency access laws and the damage to neighboring properties from the fire." Karen's jaw dropped. "What the hell is finding you for obstruction of emergency services and reckless endangerment?" The crowd burst into applause. Karen let out a strangled gasp. "You can't find me. I am the HOA." Thompson adjusted his glasses. "Actually, as of 3 minutes ago, we unanimously voted to remove you from the HOA board." Another round of cheers. Karen looked like she might actually explode. "You can't do that," she screeched, voice cracking. Thompson raised an eyebrow. "Karen, the HOA doesn't allow permanent exterior fire damage on homes. If you don't have repairs completed within 30 days, you'll be fined daily." Karen's soul left her body. Her house was still burning, and the HOA was already fining her for it. The firefighters' revenge. At this point, Karen had lost it completely. She stormed toward Captain Morales, looking like a deranged banshee covered in soot. "I'll have you all fired," she screeched. Ramirez, standing nearby, couldn't help himself. He turned to Morales and said, "You hear that, Cap? She's going to fire the fire department." The entire team burst into laughter. Karen turned an impressive shade of red, pointing a shaking finger at them. This is a lawsuit waiting to happen. Morales, cross his arms. Go ahead, sue us, but first tell the judge why you blocked emergency services and nearly let a man die. Karen froze. For the first time, actual fear flickered in her eyes because he was right. There was footage, there were witnesses, and if she sued, it would only make things worse for her. For the first time all night, Karen shut up. Morales turned to his crew. All right, boys, let's finish putting out what's left of this house. Karen let out a strangled noise, her knees buckling as she stared at the smoldering wreckage that had once been her perfect, pristine home. The universe had spoken, and it had a sense of humor. The smoke had barely begun to clear when a neighborhood uprising began. Karen, still covered in soot, stumbled away from her burning house, radiating off her like heat waves from the smoldering wreckage. The fire had been mostly contained, but the damage was done. Her outdoor kitchen was obliterated, her entire backyard was charred beyond recognition, and the flames had climbed just enough to make her second-floor windows explode outward in a rain of shattered glass. And now her kingdom was turning against her. The moment President Thompson announced her removal, the crowd erupted into applause. It wasn't just polite clapping. This was the kind of standing ovation reserved for the fall of a dictator. Karen whipped around, her frazzled hair looking even more unhinged in the flickering light. What is wrong with you people? I made this neighborhood better. Mr. Patel, her longtime nemesis, stepped forward, arms crossed. Better you find me $500 because my mailbox was the wrong shade of beige. Another neighbor chimed in, you towed my car for being in my own driveway. An older woman, seeing red, shook her head. You made my grandson cry because you banned chalk drawings on the sidewalk. One by one, the neighbors aired their grievances, each one a reminder of just how much Karen had made their lives miserable. The most damning was Mrs. McCarthy. Still shaken from her father's medical scare, she stepped forward. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were filled with fury. You almost let my father die tonight because you cared more about your stupid rules than an actual emergency. Karen opened her mouth, but no sound came out because for once in her life, she had nothing to say. The HOA meeting from hell. The next evening, the HOA board held an emergency meeting and the entire neighborhood showed up. It was supposed to take place in the clubhouse, but there were too many people, so it was moved outside, right in front of Karen's scorched house. Karen, now demoted to mere homeowner status, stood off to the side, arms crossed, her expression swinging between indignation and barely contained rage. The meeting started calmly enough. President Thompson laid out the charges: obstruction of emergency services, HOA abuse of power, property damage to neighboring homes due to negligence, and the final straw, blocking the fire truck and endangering lives. A resident's life, then came the punishment. Effective immediately, Thompson announced Karen is removed from any and all HOA leadership. Furthermore, due to the damages her actions caused, she will be responsible for the cleanup and repair costs to all affected properties. The crowd cheered. Karen lost it. This is illegal. You can't do this, she shrieked, looking wildly around as if expecting a sudden loyal army of supporters to rise up and back her. No one did. Thompson ignored her tantrum and continued. Due to the extensive damage to her property, she will have 30 days to repair it. Failure to comply will result in daily fines per HOA Regulation 4.7, exterior home maintenance. The irony hit Karen like a brick to the face. She had written hundreds of these violation letters herself, gleefully finding her neighbors for the tiniest infractions: a faded shutter, a slightly overgrown hedge, a holiday decoration left up one day too long. Now she was the one being fined, and everyone was enjoying the sweet, sweet justice. The final blow: Karen gets a taste of her own medicine. Karen stormed up to Thompson, jabbing a finger in his chest. You just wait. I'm suing all of you. Thompson simply sighed and pulled out a neatly printed stack of documents. Karen hesitated. What's that? Your violation notices. Karen's eyes bulged. You can't fine me for this. It's my house. Thompson didn't even blink. Exactly. And as per HOA regulations, if you don't repair it, You're in violation, and violations come with daily fines." The crowd cheered again. Karen was spiraling. She turned in desperation to her last hope, her insurance company. Surely they would cover the damages, and she could find a way out of this mess. Right? Wrong. The next day, Karen received the devastating news. Her homeowner's insurance wouldn't cover the damages because she had personally blocked emergency services, violating their terms of coverage. Her house, burned, broken, and now deemed uninhabitable, was a total loss, and she had to pay for everything out of pocket. Karen was officially ruined. The grand finale, a new dawn for the neighborhood. A week later, the McCarthy family, whom Karen nearly destroyed with her selfishness, hosted a block party. It wasn't just any party. It was a No More Karen celebration. Everyone came. There was a karaoke machine, barbecue, and even a giant banner that read, "Good riddance to HOA Tyranny." Karen wasn't invited. Instead, she stood at her window, watching her former kingdom thrive without her. A few weeks later, her house still stood in ruins, and the fines kept piling up. The HOA refused to back down. Finally, Karen snapped. She packed her bags and moved out in disgrace. But the universe wasn't quite done teaching her a lesson. She bought a house in a new HOA community across town, thinking she could start over. But the day she moved in, she found a letter waiting for her in the mailbox. A violation notice for her mailbox being the wrong shade of beige. Karen screamed, Ed in frustration, crumpling the notice in her fist, and somewhere, Karma laughed. The air was different in the neighborhood after Karen left. It felt lighter, freer, like the entire community had just been released from a long, oppressive reign. The days of ridiculous fines, surprise inspections, and condescending HOA emails were finally over. To celebrate, the McCarthys threw a massive block party, the HOA Rebellion Party. The entire street was lit up with string lights, music pumped from speakers, and the scent of grilled burgers and barbecue filled the air. For the first time in years, people were relaxing. Lawn chairs spilled into the sidewalks. Kids rode their bikes without fear of being fined for excessive outdoor activity. And Mr. Patel, who had racked up thousands in HOA fees under Karen's rule, fired up his brand new, completely unapproved charcoal grill. "Take that, Karen," he muttered with a smirk, flipping a burger. Even the firefighters were invited, arriving to a standing ovation. Captain Morales and Ramirez graciously accepted free plates of food, shaking hands with the neighbors like war heroes returning home. "Never thought I'd get a burger out of responding to an HOA call," Ramirez joked, stuffing his face. From her house, or what was left of it, Karen watched the celebration unfold with pure, unfiltered rage. The entire street was laughing, dancing, and having fun without her. Karen's final act of desperation. But Karen wasn't the type to go down quietly. While the neighborhood partied, she was furiously typing away at her laptop, preparing one last desperate attempt at revenge, an HOA-wide lawsuit. Her plan? Sue everyone. The board, the fire department, the McCarthys, anyone who had dared to oppose her. She stormed into the local attorney's office the next morning, covered in soot stains and still seething from her downfall. "I want to sue the HOA for wrongful termination of my position." The lawyer, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair, barely looked up from his paperwork. "Okay, were you voted out?" "Legally, according to HOA bylaws?" Karen paused. "Well, yes. Then you don't have a case." Her eye twitched. "Fine. I'll sue the fire department for destruction of property." The lawyer said, "Ma'am, you blocked emergency services, which is illegal. That lawsuit won't hold up in court." Karen's face went red. "Then I'll sue my insurance company for refusing to pay for the damages." This time, the lawyer gave her a sympathetic but exhausted look. "They denied your claim because you violated your own policy," he shrugged. "Honestly, if you push this, you might be the one facing legal action." Karen's stomach dropped. She had nothing, no power, no allies, no way out. For the first time in her entire life, she was truly defeated. The sweet epilogue. A month later, Karen finally gave up. Her once pristine house, now a blackened wreck, was officially condemned due to the extensive fire damage. The daily HOA fines kept rolling in, and with no insurance money to cover, she was forced to sell the house at a massive loss. The neighbors cheered the day the moving trucks arrived. Karen tried to act like she was leaving on her own terms, chin high, sunglasses on, but everyone knew she had been driven out by her own rules. The ultimate irony. Karen had no choice but to move into a new HOA community on the other side of town. She thought it would be a fresh start, a chance to rebuild. But the day after she moved in, she found something waiting for her in her mailbox. A violation notice for what? Her mailbox was the wrong shade of beige. Karen let out a primal scream, crumpling the letter in her fist. The universe had spoken, and karma had a perfect sense of humor. The camera zooms in on Karen's crumpled violation notice, her rage-filled scream echoing into the sky. Then, smash cut back to the celebration. The neighborhood was alive with laughter, music, and the delicious scent of grilled steaks and burgers. People were free, finally able to live their lives without constant fines, nitpicky rule enforcement, and HOA tyranny. Karen? She was just a bad memory now. But before we wrap this up, let's talk about what we all just witnessed. The perfect wrap-up, what we learned today. This wasn't just a story about an out-of-control HOA tyrant getting her karma. No, this was a lesson in what happens when power goes to someone's head. Why common sense is more important than petty rules. How blocking a fire truck can backfire in the most poetic way possible. Karen thought she was above the rules until those same rules turned against her. And let's be honest, this was the most satisfying downfall we've seen in a long time. Let's hear from you. What would you do if Karen was in your neighborhood? Drop your best HOA Karen revenge stories in the comments. What was your favorite moment in this video? Was it when the firefighters smashed her car window, when the HOA fined her for her own fire damage, or when she got a violation at her new house? Tell us your wildest HOA stories. Have you ever had a power-hungry Karen try to fine you for something ridiculous? Let's talk about it in the comments. If you love this insane HOA drama, we've got plenty more where that came from. Smash that like button if you think karma got Karen real good. Subscribe now for more wild HOA stories, crazy neighborhood drama, and the most ridiculous tales of petty revenge. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode of HOA Chaos, because trust me, this neighborhood drama is far from over. Final shot. The camera pans out over the joyful block party, zooming in on a sign someone taped to a mailbox. HOA tyrants not welcome. Fade to black.